Mr. President, on this, your 80th birthday, we would like to join with the thousands of others who wish you well on this happy day and wish you many more years of good health and happiness.
Thank you.
I'm sure you have a very keen memory back through the 80 years, a great span of life that you've given in the service of Ireland.
Well, my memory is fairly good for that period.
What is your earliest memory, President?
My earliest memory really is in America itself, but I remember coming home on the boat at what was then called Queenstown, and my first night in Ireland, I remember both well.
You have, I'm sure, a close memory of your days at school in Bruree in County Limerick.
I have. I remember them fairly well.
They were very happy days?
Well, like most schoolboy days, some happy and some not so happy.
You were, I'm quite sure, a very good pupil anyway.
I'm not so sure of that.
Why do you say that, President?
Oh, well, I found myself, I'd expect to be average in my class or something like that.
Well, you had a great aptitude for mathematics, even in the very early days.
I didn't ever believe that. I found by chance when I went to Blackrock College, I happened to be somewhat better than the other boys in mathematics. That was the only thing.
Yes. Well, you went to the Christian Brothers in Ráth Luirc
yes.
After leaving Bruree school.
Yes, I was there for nearly 2 years, and 2 academics years.
Would you agree, President, that it was when, in 1907 or thereabouts, that you joined the Gaelic League, that you found expression for your national sentiment and aspirations?
Well, it was in the Gaelic League that I realized best what our nation was and what had to be done in order to get the freedom that was necessary to realize ourselves again in present times.
The League was then, of course, the mainspring of national feeling, a national movement.
Oh, no doubt about that. You see, you had in the League at that time, you had Pearce, you had McDonough, you had Kent and Plunkett, quite a number of those who were in the Gaelic League, and of course men like Clark and Conley were intensely nationalistic. Some may think that Conley was not so much, but that's not true. I know that's not true, because he told me so.
Well,
he was intensely in favor of freedom for our country, and it would be very difficult to be in the Gaelic League and to be thinking of the nation whose language was the language we were learning without being in favor of freedom for that country again. It brought us into contact with Irish history in a very special way.
Well, your advocacy of the language, the preservation of the language then, President, is quite in consonance with its advocacy today, in fact.
Well, quite. I see no reason to change. We have greater opportunities today in many regards. Of course, we haven't as many native Irish speakers probably today as we had 50 or 60 years ago, but we certainly have more opportunities available for the rapid learning of the language by those who are not in Irish-speaking areas.
Would you expect a greater consciousness of the national value of the language in these times, President?
Well, you would probably, because it was the main national movement at the time, the Gaelic League was, and those who are in the Gaelic League, of course, were all the time dealing with the language primarily.
Yes.
Not exclusively.
Of course. You went to
Remember that in the Gaelic League you had the men I've also already mentioned, Pearce and Liz, but you had people like McDermott too, who was very, very active.
Sean McDermott.
Sean McDermott, yes.
You went to the Leinster College of Irish in 1908, I think it was.
Well, it's I'm not quite sure. Was it 1908 or 7? But just about that time.
And it was
possibly 1908.
It was there that you met a charming lady who was to become Mrs. de Valera.
Yes, it was there I met my wife. Yes.
She taught there, in fact, I think, President.
She did, yes.
You were a pupil of hers?
I was.
Yes. You went to the Irish colleges in Tourmakeely. Did you go to the Irish college in Tourmakeely?
Oh, I didn't actually go to the college, but I went to the Tourmakeely area. She was at the college, and I went down all day.
Well, in the years that followed, you joined the Irish Volunteers in 1913.
Yes.
On its foundation.
I joined the Irish Volunteers the first night it was formed in the rink.
And when your family was still very young, you found yourself facing the rising of 1916.
That's so.
There were dark years to follow, President, dark years and sad years for Ireland and for Irishmen, the years that followed and that through the treaty times.
Well, there were dark years and glorious years too. The whole of that period, of course, was an extraordinary period in which a small nation was challenging a great empire. And remember, we were close beside Britain, not like countries far away with very large populations and thousands of miles away.
Yes.
We were close up, and it was going to be a very, very difficult struggle. And it's not surprising that some of the difficulties that did arise arose.
Yes. But you yourself have deep feelings about them, and I'm sure that for you, the division of Irishmen was a sad thing too.
It was, of course, very
Yes.
sad, but there it was. And probably the same thing would have happened in any other country under more or less similar circumstances.
Yes. If I were to ask you, President, what to recall some of the happiest moments of your 80 years, it's a big, large question, I know, but would you be able to answer it?
The happiest moments.
Yes.
Oh, I've had very many happy moments in my life. I've had some sad ones. Very difficult to enumerate them all, you know.
Are there any that stand out?
Let me see. Well, I suppose one of the first happy experiences was when I got the prize that enabled me to get to college. The walk 7 miles was very difficult, you know.
Yes.
And then after that, I suppose, my marriage.
Yes.
And after that, we had the winning of the 1918 elections, was a tremendous thing.
You had a resounding victory for Clare, what?
Well, yes.
In 1917?
For the Sinn
Yes.
Féin movement, the new Sinn Féin movement.
Yes.
And I suppose it was a very happy moment when I was elected as president in 1919.
Yes.
And subsequent moments too.
What would you say was the most historic event in your career, Mr. President?
Of course, I've always thought that the decision of the men who came out in 1916 was the biggest decision that has been in Irish history that I know of, because these men fully realized what the problem was and the difficulties. And I suppose the fact that I was afterwards in a position in which I could carry on that work was an occasion of great happiness.
The office of presidency is a very onerous one, I'm sure, Mr. de Valera. Do you find any time to pursue your other interests now, such as mathematics and physics?
Oh, just a little.
You keep in touch just the same?
I do, just a little.
Well, now, just before we leave, might I ask you what future president you would wish for the country of which you're president?
Well, the future I would hope for would be that we would continue to be true to ourselves and be worthy of a very great past. And if we do that, we'll certainly have nothing to daunt us in the future.
Thank you very much. We would like to wish yourself and Mrs. de Valera many more years to come of happiness and good health.
Thank you very much.